Hi guys, my name is Yolanda Mendoza, and today I'm going to be talking about cognitive reserve in action, specifically the protective role of bilingualism in Alzheimer's disease. I grew up bilingual, and I've always been really curious about how Alzheimer's affects the brain, especially more so because I had a grandfather from my mom's side um, who had Alzheimer's disease. So I was very young, but I briefly do remember his health and memory decline over time. It was difficult seeing somebody that I cherished struggling with everyday tasks like this. So it always made me wonder, why do some people progress the symptoms so quickly versus others? And honestly, it's just a very fascinating thing to see how researchers can study the brain. They can identify the protective factors and they can learn ways to help support cognitive health. That curiosity is what led me to explore what the role of bilingualism in building cognitive reserve plays. Even small everyday actions like switching between languages with my family and hearing people switch languages within their family, even as professionals and students, we consistently change our language. It really got me thinking how these abilities can strengthen our cognitive reserve. Cognitive reserve refers to the brain's ability to adapt and find new ways to complete tasks. It helps explain why some people with the same level of Alzheimer's related brain changes show very different symptoms. Basically, we're going to think of cognitive reserve like having a backup route in your brain. Imagine a city. One of the roads is blocked and the other one carries the traffic. Two people might have the same brain damage, but the one with the higher cognitive reserve continues to function better. For example, a person with Alzheimer's may still manage daily tasks independently, while somebody else with very similar brain changes is really struggling. Cognitive reserve supports our attention, our problem solving, our planning, and more than anything, our independence. Let me put it like this. Have you ever had to find a different way to solve a problem that on your first approach it didn't work? You had to think of a different way to solve this problem? That's your cognitive reserve in action. The concept of cognitive reserve was discovered in the late 1980s. Researchers, including Stern, found that some individuals with severe Alzheimer's pathology had never even displayed symptoms, meaning that they had a high cognitive reserve. Cognitive reserve allowed these patients to offset brain damage and to maintain their executive functions. Functions especially protected included our attention, inhibition, and task switching. This shows that it's not just brain damage that matters, it's how flexible and efficient the brain can be. Flexibility means your brain can recruit alternative networks, like detours in a city, for example, to continue functioning despite any challenges that may come. While bilingualism is one way to strengthen cognitive reserve, there are many ways anyone can challenge and support their brain. Things such as maintaining a healthy diet, adequate sleep, managing stress, staying socially engaged through friends, family, or even community activities. Also engaging in mentally stimulating activities, learning a new musical instrument, picking up a new hobby, solving puzzles, playing strategy games, or even learning a new language later down the road in life. For instance, someone who starts learning piano at the age of 60 is still building their cognitive reserve. They're exercising their attention, their memory, and their executive control. Every new challenge that a person goes through adds to your brain's flexibility, and it builds these backup routes for later in life. Maintaining two languages, it's like a daily mental workout. It requires inhibition, so ignoring the non-target language, task switching, moving between these two languages seamlessly, and attention control and conflict monitoring. Every time a bilingual person chooses the right word, switches languages, or even monitors their grammar, they're exercising the very brain networks Alzheimer's tends to weaken. It's like giving your brain a daily workout. Even small actions like switching between English and Spanish when talking with your family, with your friends, trains your brain in attention, flexibility, and memory. And over time, these tiny micro exercises can really build up cognitive reserve that can last a lifetime. Executive functions strengthened by bilingualism. The executive functions strengthened by bilingualism include, just as we had mentioned before, inhibition, so suppressing the non target language, selective attention, filtering competing input, set shifting, switching between linguistic rules, working memory, holding and manipulating information. And these are the exact systems that Alzheimer's disease tends to weaken. Every bilingual interaction is like a mental exercise that helps protect these functions. You know, I'm bilingual, so even as a I say younger person because Alzheimer's develops later on in life, but even as a young person who's bilingual, as I was researching this, I'm like, I definitely do that all the time. I'm definitely filtering out like any competitive input. Like at this very moment, there's specific vocabulary that I've learned in Spanish just make more sense in my brain in Spanish, but I have to tell myself I'm presenting in English. The Spanish words are not necessary at this moment. Same with my working memory. You learn stuff. For example, we jump back to neurology. We learned all the terms in English, but there's a lot of terms that I kind of went back and learned in Spanish because they stuck better and it helped my working memory. So, studies show using MRIs that bilinguals activate multiple networks. So, it gives the brain more flexibility to adapt if one pathway is affected. Kind of going back to the highways and the roads. That's why bilingualism is often called a lifelong brain workout because consistently new pathways are being created. So, how bilingualism protects the brain? Bilingualism protects the brain in several ways. Neural reserve. Bilingual brains use executive control networks more efficiently. MRI studies show reduced activation in key brain areas, meaning the brain works smarter, not harder. Neural compensations. When one pathway is affected, bilinguals can recruit alternative networks to maintain daily function. Structural differences. Bilinguals have greater gray matter density in frontal and temporal regions and stronger white matter integrity, particularly in areas supporting executive function and language control. For example, if an aging bilingual's language network slows down, another network can step in to help complete the task. Lifelong bilingualism constantly challenges the brain. Exercising pathways, Alzheimer's typically weakens. All right, now that we've talked about how bilingualism challenges and protects the brain, let's kind of gear towards Alzheimer's disease. So, as we've learned in this class, what declines first with Alzheimer's disease? Our episodic memory, so forgetting recent events. Our semantic memory means forgetting our word meanings. Executive function, so difficulty planning or multitasking. Naming things, also known as anomia, and attention and working memory. Bilingual brains tend to retain executive functions longer, helping maintain independence, decision making, and daily living skills. For example, bilingual seniors may still be able to manage their finances, cook independently, or navigate new environments due to this cognitive reserve and due to the continuing work of the executive functions. So they may still be able to do these things in comparison to a monolingual person. Studies show lifelong bilinguals experience a delay of 4 to 5 years in Alzheimer's symptoms onset, and mild cognitive impairment complaints may be delayed by 6 to 7 years compared to monolinguals. Bilingual brains show stronger executive function despite the pathology, giving the brain extra time before cognitive symptoms appear. That extra time can mean more years of independence, social connections, and quality of life. Even small differences, like being able to continue a favorite hobby, can have a high impact on a daily life and somebody's quality of life. Oops, so sorry. So, bilingualism benefits go beyond the cognition. So, as I just talked about, people can maintain their independence longer. Their executive functions could be better preserved. These notable symptoms are more delayed. And this translates to the real world benefits, being able to socialize with friends, managing a hobby, continue the daily routines, continue to do things that still make you feel as a person, all longer than someone with a lower cognitive reserve. Even small activities like chatting with a neighbor and both languages count as a mental exercise. For speech language pathologists, understanding bilingual advantages guides our therapy. So, we were to tailor individualized plans for bilingual clients. We incorporate both languages to strengthen communication and preserve identity. We target executive functions through cognitive linguistic therapy. We recognize slower symptom progression to focus on higher level skills. We provide culturally sensitive counseling to families. For example, practicing both languages during therapy can reinforce the executive control, memory, and functional communication, helping clients maintain independence longer. So, to summarize what we've talked about and learned together today, cognitive reserve allows the brain to adapt and recruit alternative pathways protecting against aging and disease. Specifically, in this case, we were talking about Alzheimer's disease. Bilingualism strengthens cognitive reserve, particularly executive functions, like as we've talked today, attention, inhibition, and task switching. Bilingual adults often show delayed onset of Alzheimer's disease. And you guessed it, this is because of their cognitive reserve. SLP should consider bilingual experience in therapy and assessment. And honestly, challenging your brain, challenging your brain does change your brain. Anyone and everyone can challenge their brains through daily language, social engagement, and mentally stimulating activities. There's various ways to challenge the brain. As we spoke about earlier, even a 60-year-old who is learning to play the piano for the first time, they're building on their cognitive reserve. You're learning a new skill, which requires you to remember it. So memory, it requires the executive functions to the inhibition to begin that task. There's just various ways we can continue to work out our brains and work out our cognitive reserve and build that endurance, I think is a great way to put it. Endurance of our brain. So, while bilingualism is a powerful way to strengthen our cognitive reserve, monolinguals can also benefit from challenging their brains in many ways. As I've said, learning a new skill, solving puzzles, playing strategy games. I remember one time a middle school teacher told us that Sudoku was really good for your brain, and that's all it took. I've played Sudoku ever since then. So even everyday tasks like cooking our new recipe, navigating to a new place, even if it's using our GPS, because we know we all use GPSs now, or learning a new hobby, these are all things that count as brain exercises. The key is keeping the brain active and adaptable, continuing to grow our intelligence, our everything in our brain. It's the key to keeping our brain active and healthy. Cognitive reserve isn't just a theory. It's something that we can build, we can practice, and we benefit from every day. Thank you guys. Here's my references. Good luck, everyone.